Before we start off with Brock Station, as with many stations up and down the country, there probably was a predecessor. So here on the West Coast main line between Preston to the south and Lancaster off to the north, Brock Station's previous location was called Roebuck. It was built in 1840 and lasted 9 years before it was decommissioned. The station was just east of Billsborrow Lane in a little area known locally as Duncomber.
The original station was named because of the nearest house or inn, then called Roebuck Inn, now known as the Roebuck Hotel. The bridge over the river was also called the Roebuck Bridge, a structure more impressive than the station. The station probably had no platform or station buildings. It's mentioned it was only a small little box, or a sentry box, beside the track.
As much as I've tried to find out more about Roebuck Station, unfortunately there's nothing more than it being committed to history as a railway ghost. But unlike Roebuck, around 1949 a new station was built to accommodate the ever inflating popularity of the railways. This area has always been an area that's had some form of long distance travel from Preston to Cumbria, some form of a pathway or a roadway, especially parts of the A6. Some of it was actually a Roman road. The more north you get, the more of a chance that is the case. So this was an ideal path to build a railway line, eventually a main railway line, to get it all the way into Scotland. And like the railway, the canals also roam along this area as well. This stretch we now know as the West Coast Main Line was completed when Lancaster and Preston Junction Railway opened it in 1840. So we had Roebuck Station built in 1840. That lasted 9 years before it was decommissioned. Around that time, or maybe just before, Brock Station, which was built around that sort of time in 1849, that was built just beyond the bridge here behind me. That lasted till 1939. It remained as a goods yard for another 15 years before it was completely scrapped. Unlike some of the stations that were pulled down and lands abandoned, this line has never been abandoned. This stretch has always been vital to get passengers and goods up and down the country, and today it's still one of the busiest freight routes in Europe, carrying 40% of the United Kingdom's freight. Brock Station lasted 90 years. Can you imagine that? Compared to what the 69 years that it's been closed. You can only imagine how busy and how popular the station had become. A little bit of a bonus. I love it when I find things like this. When you go to certain areas and they put like a plaque up of information of the station or whatever sort of railway buildings, infrastructure that was there before. And here at Brock, they've actually got a plaque here, which is excellent because there's photographs on here, photographs I've never seen, and information here which I didn't find out. Now in this film, in this vlog that I'm doing, I talk about a single death, a lady called Anne Baines, that she was killed while she was trying to get across the tracks. But interesting enough, when I was doing my research yesterday, I went to St Hilda's Church at Billsborrow just to do some general footage in the graveyard, as I do when people have been killed. And I was talking to some people and they were telling me that they don't know about an Anne Baines being killed. I've seen this on the internet. They were telling me about a lady called Jane Salisbury, I think the name was given to me. So potentially that there's been two ladies, sadly, that were killed here at Brock Station for the lifespan that it was here, 90 years. I've just found something on here about this, and just by pure coincidence I was at that particular church when they told me that she'd given money to the church as part of her passing, as it were. She'd already put this in her will. In 1922, Jane Salisbury of Myscough Hall was tragically killed on the level crossing at Brock, and she left money to fund St Hilda's Parish Church in Billsborrow, the last stone-built church in the region, consecrated in 1927. Brilliant. It's like a jigsaw bringing things together, and that is like a little bit of a bonus. One life taken by the line was in June 1874, and Baines, aged 75, the widow of the late Matthew Talbot Baines, a former MP for Leeds. She caught the train from Lancaster to Brock railway station. At Brock station, there was no walkover bridge or any subway to get to the other platform on the other side, so you had to walk across the tracks. This is what Anne Baines did to connect her onward journey. After sitting in the waiting room, she had noticed an oncoming train, and she was thinking that this was her connection. She dashed across the tracks to try and catch that train. Thomas Martin, the son of the station master of Barton, witnessed the tragic accident. As he witnessed the event, it said that he cried out to the lady to tell her it wasn't her train, it was a through train, but she continued to cross the tracks. He warned her she'd be struck. The driver of the passing locomotive, well, he blew the whistle, he slammed on the brakes, he did what he could to stop the locomotive, but it was too late. Anne was struck by the train, and witnesses say on the platform that she was cut in two. Her remains were collected from off the line and taken to the Green Man. Information on here about the station itself, which, as much as I've given information in the short film I've made, I'm going to read what's from here because I think it's very important. The earliest station of 1839 to 1840 was near Roebuck Inn, but it was moved to this site in 1841 to avoid temptation to the company's employees. The Brock water troughs were installed where the M6 now runs. There are badges or Brock emblems in the stonework of the railway bridges from the crest of the Fitzherbert Brockholes family, Barton Hall. So there's badges, stone badges in the brickwork. I'm going to have a little hunt and find that one out. But brilliantly enough, there is a photograph here of the station when it shut. It says here it was finally closed in 1954, which tallies with the information I got. So it shut to passengers in 1939 and it shut for goods traffic in 1954. Fantastic aerial photograph. But if you do come to Brock, it is just along the A6 here, as if you're heading towards Garstang. So if you come off the M55 motorway, or you come along the A6 from the south, as you end up towards what is a car showroom on the right hand side, there's a roundabout with Barton Grange. You'll see where the car showroom is, you'll see this great big green bridge that's behind me here. Now this is where the station used to be. The station was in this sort of area here. Just to my left was the signal box on my side, as that photograph in 1954 shows. You can still see two yellow coloured lamps that I'm assuming are original and would have been there when the station was there. Great to see old little relics still lying around, showing silently where this ghost station used to be. It's always good to sweeten the deal, as it were, and find out a little bit more about an area that you didn't expect. And one thing that I've learned about doing these adventures is for the time that these stations existed, the amount of activity that they would have witnessed, if it wasn't for the fact and the dedication of rail enthusiasts and historians, then nobody would ever notice the difference. Now obviously the line still exists and will do for many years to come. Obviously the line still exists and will do for many years to come, but originally the line was built by many different companies between 1830 and 1880. This section here was built by the Lancaster and Preston Junction Railway. Further north it was then built by the Lancaster and Carlisle Railway, but later then it was absorbed by the LNWR. And the route came under the sole control of the London and Midland and Scottish Railway, or the LMS, on the 1st of January 1923, when the different railway companies were grouped under the Railways Act of 1921. So a lot of history over the years, especially since 1955, there was a modernisation plan, hence why Brock Station was destroyed. Now, when the line was modernised, it was also electrified in stages between 1959 and I think 1974. So today is just basically a public footpath besides the river, a popular spot for rail enthusiasts, local rail enthusiasts, and a picnic area besides a pond, wedged neatly between the M6 on that side and the A6 on that side. So 90 years of being a railway station involving many lives of work and pleasure. It's ironic to think how a modernised Roman road and canalway has superseded this station, or these stations, twice over, taking life with it. Before I go, I'll show you some juicy little bits, if you can call them that. Whatever's left of the station and the line. Signal box was just right here behind me. There are little bits, I'll show you those in a minute, but just to end and reflect, as it were, the railway obviously is still filming here, and who knows what the next chapter in this section of railway line will hold. It's interesting though, when you look on the internet, that it only talks about one death and Baines, but then we read down there, it doesn't even mention Anne Baines. It talks about someone completely different, Jane I think it said. So it's always good to do your research. If you know more about Brock, then please by all means put the information in the comments section below. If I've got anything wrong, please don't hang me for it. Same with any future vlogs or past vlogs. As you can appreciate, we're going back to that 1830, 1840. It's very difficult to find anything about these railways. Now let's have a look. As I was explaining before, I'm just going to stand on here and hold on to this very spiky green fencing. Hopefully it doesn't fall down. That you've got this post here, which would have been definitely of the original station, and the same applies to another one which is just beyond, on the other side there, and they've never been removed. But the signal box, I can only assume where this grey fencing area is exactly where the signal box is. Again, if you know, comment below. A little bit of stonework there just in the centre of the shot, which could have been of something or nothing. But otherwise there's no platforms and there's absolutely nothing to see. We've now got the showroom over there on the other side, where the grounds of the station was probably going to be. I need to get down now. Oof. Bridge section, walking all the way across onto the other side, which is the A6 side, and then we've got the motorway over there. But there is a pathway which you can walk all the way across down there, all the way around, and you can walk, which I'm going to do now to get some B-roll shots of the trains, down here, and you go over the river like a little beck or river, which I'll show you in a second. That is a great spot to do some rail photography or video. So if you do come here, head down the steps, walk your way around down there, you'll see it as soon as you get there. Lovely little spot, you're safe, and you can get some great shots of the railways. You can see there's a bridge, a footpath that goes over the beck or the river. There's the railway line here at Brock Station. It's actually behind the camera, I've showed you that. But it is a great advantage to get this. And another sign of a modernisation plan, I think was it 1954 I said, was the bridge that's behind me, the railway bridge that's behind me is very much a sort of 50s, 60s, I'm not an expert, but the sort of metalwork that's used, that sort of span. But just below, can you see the brickwork down here? The footings are where the beck and or the river runs along. It looks like it was the stone foundation of the original bridge that was here. It was just south of the station itself. That is definitely evidence of a stone bridge, an original stone bridge that was built here just by the railway station. So for the duration of time that the station was actually here, no footbridge was installed. It was only years afterwards, after the station was demolished, that they decided, to health and safety reasons, that it's a lot safer to bang the bridge in. If they put a bridge in the first place, those two ladies' lives, maybe, would have been saved. It's a funny old world, isn't it?